Hi, how are you today? So in this video, I'm going to be taking a look at something very interesting from the past. This is something you don't see as much of nowadays, but I remember back in the day, I used to see these all the time. And I'm talking about Flexi Discs. Now, some of you may be very familiar with Flexi Discs. Some of you may have never heard of them before, but they're very interesting. Basically, I'll show you, this is one Flexi Disc that I have in my collection. One of my favorite bands is called the Human League, and this is a Flexi Disc that they released in 1979, I believe. And basically on this particular Flexi Disc, there's no music. It's basically the band just talking, and I find it quite interesting. But as you can see, Flexi discs were very thin and very flexible. You could do that and it didn't hurt them at all, although I wouldn't fold it too hard. But as you can see, they were very thin, extremely flexible, and that certainly explains the name Flexi Disc. And this was released by a label called Fast. The Human League, their early recordings were released on a Scottish label called Fast, which was run by a gentleman named Larry Fast. Now, Flexi Discs, as I said, back in the day I used to see them all the time, kind of in the late 70s and well into the 80s. One place I used to see them was in magazines. Often magazines would insert them inside their latest issue. For example, I remember back in the day, Keyboard magazine used to have competitions where they would have like a songwriting competition, and the one song that got chosen as the winner of the competition would be put on a Flexi Disc and inserted into the latest issue of Keyboard. And that was always something really cool and something that I always looked forward to. I even remember Mad magazine back in the day. There was one issue in particular, I think it had something to do with a high school graduation, the Millard Fillmore high school graduation, and the Flexi Disc was in that issue of Mad magazine. And yeah, they kind of popped up everywhere back then. I remember they used to be on boxes. For example, they used to be on cereal boxes, believe it or not. Sometimes you'd see them on cereal boxes, and that's the back of the Flexi Disc. There's no grooves, there's nothing playable on the reverse side. But yeah, as I mentioned, sometimes cereal companies would put a Flexi Disc right on the back of the cereal box. And that was something that kids could cut off from the back of the box, put on their turntable, and listen to some crazy song. Usually it was some silly novelty song that kids could play on their record players. And you'd find them on the back of, at Easter time when people would buy chocolate rabbits. Sometimes there'd be a Flexi Disc on the back of the chocolate rabbit box. Basically, they'd be in a lot of different places, and they were often aimed at kids. So again, Flexi Discs were sort of very common back in those days. I remember seeing them a lot. Today they're still rather collectible. As far as the sound quality goes, the sound quality on these things was never great, and it shouldn't really be expected to be. You know, I wouldn't say the sound quality is horrible, but it's not great either. It's certainly not comparable to regular vinyl. To me, Flexi Discs always had this sort of compressed kind of mid-range sound. To me, they sounded a little bit tinny, a little bit flat, and they had a very kind of mid-range sound. But again, they were never intended to be released for, you know, absolute sound quality, perfect sound quality. They were mostly meant to be released as a novelty, as a collectible, and I always found them really fun. I always thought they were a lot of fun to collect. I don't have a ton of Flexi Discs, but I do have a few in my collection. So my question for you, do you have any Flexi Discs in your collection? Which ones do you have? Do you have a favorite Flexi Disc? Please feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. As I mentioned before, if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. It's always greatly appreciated, and it really helps my channel grow. And this channel now features over 300 videos. And thank you very much for your support of the channel. Thanks again. Hope you can join us again next time. We'll see you again. Take care. Bye-bye.